Something inside me shifted, a memory. A real one, not forced, not planted. A night months ago. A bus stop. A red glow. A voice calling my name. A shadow touching my ankle. A coldness spreading through my veins. A whisper, "You'll help me find them." My knees buckled. I slid down the wall, shaking. The voice in the room purred, "You were the first. You were the door. You were mine long before the others." The lights flickered. The air thickened. And for the first time, I understood something I had been refusing to see. I wasn't just connected to the entity. I wasn't just chosen. I was claimed. The lights went out. Total darkness. In that darkness, something leaned close. Breath cold against my ear. And it whispered, "You're not telling their stories. You're telling mine." The lights snapped back on. The room was empty. The footprints were gone. But the paper remained. And now, beneath the original message, a new line had appeared. "Tonight, 12, your turn." I left my apartment before midnight, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't stay inside. The air felt wrong. The walls felt thin. The shadows felt crowded. Every time I blinked, I saw movement in the corners of my vision. Shapes that didn't belong to the geometry of my home. Shapes that leaned too far forward. Shapes that waited for me to close my eyes again. So I walked. Down the stairwell, through the lobby, out into the cold night air. The city felt empty, not quiet. Empty. Like every sound was being swallowed before it reached my ears, like the world was holding its breath, like something enormous was listening. I walked past the corner store, closed, lights off, no clerk inside. I walked past the diner, chairs stacked, windows dark, no cook, no waitress, no late-night regulars. I walked past the busier streets, no cars, no pedestrians, no dogs barking from balconies, no music leaking from apartment windows. Just silence. Thick, heavy, absolute. It felt like the city had been evacuated, or erased, or paused, just for me. When I reached Ashwood and Briar, the streetlight above the bus stop flickered once. Then again. Then it went out completely. The darkness that followed wasn't normal darkness. It felt alive, like something was standing just outside the circle of my vision, waiting for me to step closer. The bus stop was there. Of course it was. Glass fogged, bench dripping, schedule glowing faintly. But something was different. The shelter wasn't empty. Someone was sitting on the bench. At first I thought it was a man. Tall. Still. Head bowed, but the longer I looked, the less human he became. His posture was wrong. Too rigid, too straight, like his spine had been replaced with a metal rod. His hands rested on his knees, fingers long and motionless. His clothes were soaked, dripping steadily onto the concrete. I stepped closer. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't acknowledge me. But the fog on the glass behind him shifted. Words formed slowly, as if written by a trembling hand. "You know him." My stomach twisted. I stepped closer. The figure lifted his head, and I saw his face. Daniel, or what was left of him, skin pale, eyes hollow, veins dark beneath the surface. The same stain that had spread across his wrist now crawled up his neck, branching like black lightning. His mouth opened. No sound came out. But the fog behind him wrote for him. "You left me." I staggered back. "No," I whispered. "I didn't." The fog smeared violently. New words appeared. "You watched." My breath caught. The figure stood, slowly, mechanically. like a puppet being lifted by invisible strings. He stepped toward me. His feet made no sound. His shadow stretched too far behind him, bending around the edges of the shelter like it was trying to escape his body. He raised a hand, not to touch me, to point at the street behind me. I turned. The red glow was already there, closer than it should have been, too close. The bus slid into view, wheels flexing, windows pulsing, destination sign flickering through symbols that made my vision blur. The doors opened. The smell hit me. Incense, stone, blood. The voice whispered, "You brought him back. Bring the others. Bring yourself." I shook my head. "No, I'm not yours." The voice laughed, soft, delighted. "You were mine the moment you stepped on the first stair. You just don't remember." The shadows spilled from the bus, thin, slick, alive. They reached for me, and Daniel, or the thing wearing him, stepped aside, giving them room. The shadows touched my shoes, cold, hungry, eager, and something inside me cracked. A memory. A real one, not forced, not planted. A night long before Marissa, long before Daniel, long before Evan. A night when I stood at the bus stop alone. A night when the bus arrived for me. A night when I stepped inside. A night when the entity whispered, "You'll help me find them." My knees buckled. The shadows wrapped around my ankles. The voice purred, "You're not the victim. You're not the witness. You're the reason they come here. You're the one who opens the door." The shadows tightened. The bus hummed. The figure that used to be Daniel watched silently, and the voice whispered one final truth. "You're not telling a story. You're confessing." I didn't walk to the bus stop that night. I didn't choose to. My body moved on its own, like a puppet following invisible strings. Every step felt familiar, rehearsed, like I'd walked this path 1,000 times before. Maybe I had. The city was still empty, the air still heavy, the silence still absolute. But something was different. The world felt thinner, like a sheet of paper stretched too tight, ready to tear. And beneath that paper, something enormous shifted, waiting, breathing, smiling. When I reached the intersection, the bus stop wasn't flickering. It wasn't appearing. It wasn't waiting. It was alive. The glass pulsed faintly, like lungs expanding and contracting. The metal frame vibrated with a low hum that crawled through my bones. The bench dripped with condensation that pooled on the concrete in shapes that looked disturbingly like footprints. The schedule panel glowed brighter than usual. Too bright, painfully bright. I stepped closer, and I saw my name. Not once, not twice, but filling the entire panel. 12 more, you 12 of Laubadium, you 12 more, you. Each line pulsed with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The shelter fogged violently, as if something pressed its entire weight against the inside. A shape formed, not a face, a silhouette, tall, elongated, spine arched like a hooked blade, limbs too long, head too narrow. The same shape I'd seen in the bus, the same shape that had whispered to me, the same shape that had followed me home. It leaned closer, the fog bulged outward, and words carved themselves into the condensation. "Welcome back." My breath caught. "I never left," I whispered. The glass cracked. A thin fracture raced across the panel. New words appeared. "You did, but you always return." The hum in the air deepened, the ground vibrated, and the voice, the one that had whispered to Marissa, Daniel, Evan, rose inside my skull, not like a thought, like a memory. "You were the first. You were the door. You were the one who opened the way." My knees weakened. "No," I whispered. "I didn't." The voice cut me off. You did. You called us. You begged us. You wanted us. Images flashed behind my eyes. A younger version of myself, standing at the bus stop, alone, crying, desperate, broken. A whisper, "Take me away." A shadow touching my ankle. A coldness spreading through my veins. A voice answering, "Gladly." My breath hitched. I staggered back. The truth hit me like a blow. I hadn't been chosen. I had invited it. The red glow appeared instantly. No approach, no sound, no build-up. Just there. As if it had always been there. As if it had been waiting just outside reality for the right moment to slip through. The bus slid to the curb. The doors opened. The smell hit me. Incense, stone, blood. The shadows spilled down the steps, thin, slick, alive. They reached for me, and this time I didn't step back. The voice purred. "You see it now. You remember. You belong to me. You always have." The shadows wrapped around my ankles, cold, hungry, eager. I didn't fight. I didn't scream. I didn't run, because the truth was finally clear. I wasn't the narrator of this story. I wasn't the witness. I wasn't the victim. I was the first offering, the first passenger, the first soul the entity ever claimed, and everything since, every disappearance, every whisper, every victim, had been drawn to the bus because of me. Because I had opened the door, because I had called it, because I had wanted it. The voice whispered, "Come home." And I stepped forward. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, the world outside vanished. Not faded, not dimmed, vanished. The street, the shelter, the city, the night, all gone. The doors closed behind me with a wet, organic thud, like muscle sealing shut. The air inside the bus was thick, humid, and warm, carrying the faint scent of old stone and extinguished candles. I didn't see seats. I saw ribs, curved, pale structures lining the aisle, slick with condensation, pulsing faintly with each slow, deliberate breath the vessel took. The floor wasn't metal. It was something softer, something that gave slightly under my weight, like walking on tightly stretched skin. The lights overhead flickered, not bulbs, eyes, dozens of them, blinking in slow, asynchronous patterns, watching me from above. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I walked deeper, because the truth was already inside me. Every step I took echoed strangely, as if the sound wasn't bouncing off walls but being swallowed by something hungry. The shadows between the ribs shifted, stretching toward me, recoiling, then stretching again, like hands reaching from behind a curtain. The hum grew louder, not from the bus, from me, from somewhere deep in my chest, vibrating through my bones, syncing with the heartbeat of the vessel. A voice rose inside my skull, not the whisper I'd heard before, something older, something deeper. "You remember the way." I did. My feet moved without hesitation, following a path I didn't consciously know but felt in my marrow. Left, right, down the aisle, toward the front, toward the driver's seat, toward the entity. It wasn't sitting. It was perched, its limbs folded in impossible angles, its spine arched like a hooked blade, its head tilted slightly, as if listening to something only it could hear. When it turned toward me, the air thickened. Its face wasn't a face. It was a suggestion of one, long, narrow, hollow, with deep sockets where eyes should be. The darkness inside those sockets wasn't empty. It was watching. It leaned closer. The shadows around it tightened, coiling like serpents preparing to strike. And then it spoke. Not aloud, inside me. "Welcome home." My breath caught. My pulse stuttered. But I didn't step back, because I remembered. A flash. A memory. Me, younger, standing in this same aisle, terrified, crying, begging. "Take me away." The entity leaning close and whispering, "I will. But you must bring others. You must open the door." Another flash. Me stepping off the bus. Me walking into the city. Me forgetting everything. Me becoming the lure, the narrator, the witness, the invitation. The entity reached out. Not with a hand, with a shadow. It touched my chest. Cold, sharp, intimate. And the hum inside me synced perfectly with the hum of the vessel. The voice purred. "You were the first soul I tasted. You were the sweetest. You were the one who begged, and you will beg again." My knees buckled. The shadows wrapped around my arms, my legs, my throat. Not choking, not restraining. Just holding me in place like a lover's embrace. The entity leaned close enough that I felt its breath. Cold, ancient, wrong. Brush against my skin. "Tell me a story," it whispered. "Tell me how you brought them to me." I opened my mouth, and the words came out on their own. "I didn't bring them." The entity tilted its head. The shadows tightened. I continued. "You did." A pause. A long, heavy silence. Then the entity smiled, not with lips, with the darkness inside its sockets widening, stretching, blooming like a flower made of void. "Good," it whispered. "You're remembering." The shadows pulled me closer. The vessel shuddered, and the entity whispered one final thing. Soft, delighted, triumphant. "Now tell me the rest." The shadows pulled me deeper into the bus, not dragging, guiding. Like hands on my shoulders, steering me toward a place I had already been, a place I had forgotten, a place I had once begged to return to. The aisle stretched ahead of me, ribs arching overhead like the inside of a colossal beast. The floor pulsed faintly beneath my feet, warm and alive, vibrating with the slow, steady rhythm of a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The entity watched me, not with eyes, with awareness. A pressure in the air, a weight in my skull, a presence that filled every inch of the vessel. "You remember," it whispered. I did. And that was the worst part. The shadows tightened around my arms, not painfully, possessively, like a lover reclaiming something that had wandered too far. A memory rose from the depths of my mind, uncoiling like smoke. Me, years ago. Younger. Lonely. Broken in ways I didn't understand. Standing at the bus stop, crying, begging. "Take me away." The bus arriving, the doors opening, the shadows reaching. The entity whispering, "I will, but you must help me find others." I had agreed. I had stepped inside willingly. I had become the first passenger, the first offering, the first soul the entity ever claimed. And when it was done with me, it didn't discard me. It sent me back. Changed, hollowed, marked. A beacon, a lure, a door. The entity leaned closer, its silhouette bending in ways that defied anatomy. Its presence pressed against my mind like cold fingers tracing the inside of my skull. "You brought them to me," it purred. "Marissa, Daniel, Evan. You called them. You opened the way." I shook my head. "No, I didn't want—" The shadows tightened, not hurting, correcting. "You did," the entity whispered. "You wanted someone to share your fear. You wanted someone to understand. You wanted someone to follow you." My breath caught, because it was true. Somewhere deep inside me, beneath the fear, beneath the denial, there had always been a part of me that wanted to be seen, to be understood, To not be alone in the darkness, the entity knew that. It had always known. The bus shuddered. The ribs along the walls flexed. The eyes overhead blinked in slow, rippling waves. The entity spread its limbs, unfolding like a shadow peeling itself from the world. "This vessel is not a prison," it whispered. "It is a mouth, a path, a promise." The shadows around my legs pulsed. The hum inside my chest synced perfectly with the hum of the bus. I wasn't just inside the vessel, I was part of it. I always had been. Do you want to know what happens next? If so, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because it really helps out the channel. If you want the next part of the story, comment next part in the comments. We have new stories releasing every day, so until then, haunt you later.